Hello, welcome back to Truth and Fantasy. I'm really excited about this one. We're talking about relationships, and the main theme is going to be idealization, why we idealize romantic prospects, and also why we stay in relationships that aren't emotionally fulfilling, and continue to idealize them and tell ourselves they're good, it's what we want, but deep down we know it's not meeting our needs emotionally. Um, and we're also talking a little bit about feeling unworthy of love and feeling like other people deserve relationships and you don't, which, if you are familiar with my content, I suppose. If you've watched me on YouTube for a while, you know that's a theme that I talk a lot about, and I feel like a lot of my followers resonate with that storyline. So, yeah, there's just a lot to dive into today. So, I'm very excited, and also, this is a theme that's very relevant in my own life right now. So, I might be kind of pulling from my own experiences, of course, as I always do, but even more so today. But today we are talking to Maya, and as you'll see in this interview, Maya is incredibly self-aware, and it was just really nice to talk to her and kind of get a little peek into her mind. I just love how insightful and articulate she is when she's explaining these mental patterns. So let's just get into the interview, and then I actually want to read part of her submission because I feel like it's important to speak on. So, yeah. Okay, so this is Maya, and I was just saying I really love your submissions. First of all, because I like how it's kind of two-sided. I like how you first talked about the kind of idealization and romanticism, and then the part of you that doesn't feel worthy kind of a relationship. But if you just want to go ahead and restate what your submissions are.
Yeah, so I guess I kind of just was reflecting over the last full moon and in general. And I realized that I tend to over romanticize and idealize a lot in any kind of relationship that I'm in, even if I know that it's not emotionally beneficial for me. That makes sense. So, I always also just tend to think of boys and situations in general in absolutes. So, referring to them mentally or to my friends as the best at X or the best relationship because of Y. Even if it's not necessarily toxic, but not fulfilling for what I'm wanting.
Yeah.
But then on the other side, it's I do really value my independence, and I think of myself as a very independent person, and I always tell my friends that I enjoy being single. But then internally, it's hard because I say all of these things, and even if I yearn for some sort of romantic connection with someone, as soon as I start doing that, it's I tell myself that because I'm wanting that sort of connection, then I don't deserve it. If that makes sense at all.
That makes so much sense. That was so well said, and I very much so relate to both of those kind of conversations going on within yourself. So how does this kind of how do these internal thoughts and feelings and everything, how does that then manifest externally for you? Do you just find yourself in relationships that consistently feel unfulfilling, or?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so I feel like I internalize a lot of this stuff, but it's hard for me to outwardly express it to my friends, or even right now verbally saying it out loud is difficult because it's I realize that I do these things internally, but outwardly expressing it is definitely difficult. And I feel in my relationships, even if it's just kind of very outgoing and not necessarily I guess, like, exclusive.
Yeah.
I still allow myself to be treated as less than, or to be treated in a way that I know that I don't deserve to be. But because I idealize situations, it's like, oh, well, you know, even though this sucks right now, at least I'm with someone.
Mm-hmm.
And at least, like, I'm getting attention.
Definitely.
If that makes sense. But, yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Have you, and you don't have to have an answer to this, but have you, like, traced back these thoughts and feelings to, like, a core place, maybe? Or do you have any insight into maybe what's, like, what drives you to idealize, and what is the thing that kind of keeps you in relationships that maybe feel unfulfilling?
Honestly, I'm not sure, and this is, like, definitely something that I want to talk about in therapy.
Yeah.
Just to be honest, because I have a lot of difficulties in relationships in general, or, like, my emotions are very easily swayed when it comes to my interpersonal relationships.
Yeah.
And so this is, like, a lot of what I want to discover about myself in the future.
Beautiful.
But for sure in childhood, I just didn't have a very good relationship with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
So much so that I put, like, a lot of pressure on my relationship with my dad.
Okay.
And so I feel like that's still kind of, like, coming to light now, because I put a lot of pressure on my relationships with men.
Yeah.
But I also, like, idealize my dad. Even though I've been hurt emotionally by him in the past, it's like I've thought of him as such a high figure in my life. I feel like I still do that with men today that I have relationships with.
You're so self-aware. That was really
Oh my
beautiful
gosh.
to hear. That's beautiful reflection. Well, thank you. Is there anything else you would like to add to any of that, or?
I don't think so. Just thank you for letting me do this.
Yeah, of course. Thank you
Yeah.
for coming on.
Okay, yeah.
So before we start kind of diving into all of this, like I said, I want to read part of her submission that she originally sent me, just because I love the way she words it, and we didn't get to touch on this aspect too much when we talked. So she says, I tell myself that I like being single and independent, and I think I do. But the guilt that I feel when I admit to myself that it would be nice to be in a real and honest and committed, loving relationship is so weird. It's like in my head, I've created the idea that if someone, me, admits to the fact that I would like to have a boyfriend, then I'm not deserving of one. Because for some reason, I've totally fallen accustomed to the idea that the only people truly worthy of relationships are the ones who just float into them almost by happenstance. I guess how I would explain how I feel is that every time I talk about or think about being in a relationship or being happy to be in one, I feel like it sets my chances of finding one back. Like, you only truly deserve love or will find it if you're the kind of person who just never thinks about how nice it would be to be in it, if that makes any sense at all. It makes a lot of sense to me. I kind of want to start by talking about this, because I feel like this is, I don't know, I just resonate with this so deeply, and I feel like this is one of those things that, like, we all think it's just our own mind, like, being weird, and we don't understand that everyone else thinks this way, but I feel like this is something that we all kind of have within us, that other people kind of float into relationships, and it's easier for them, and they just fall in love, and it just happens, and it's so magical, and wow, they weren't even thinking about it or, like, trying to manifest it or anything like that. And for some reason, putting the pressure on yourself and saying, like, oh, I would be happy if I was with someone, I think that can be kind of, like, guilt-inducing for a few reasons. I think, first of all, just because of this mindset that, like, other people, it's so easy for them, and for me, it's so hard. Like, I have to push to find love, sort of a thing, which isn't true. But also, I think there's so many people on social media right now, like over the past few years, who preach self-love, which is great. It's very important to have self-love. But at the same time, there's this message that's kind of placed on us that we can't or we shouldn't be in love until we fully love ourselves. And it's this kind of thing of like, oh, I need to like be with myself. I need to do the self-work. I need to learn how to love myself fully and unconditionally. And then once I get to that place, I can have a partner. And like after I've, worked on myself more, like I'm not good enough to have a partner, sort of a thing. And that's a level of idealization as well, because it's idealizing this future version of you that is going to be, for some reason, better and more worthy of love than you in this moment. So I like how that kind of ties into this theme of idealization as well. But the truth is, like, that's not what love is about. Humans are naturally, like, we are programmed to want partnership. We are programmed to need connection and intimacy. So it's never something you should feel guilty over or feel like, oh, I'm not good enough yet. I need to have more self-love. I don't know myself enough to like be in a partnership, sort of a thing. Because partnership and relationships in general, I think, are the biggest teachers about ourselves. Like, you cannot fully see yourself if you are just 100% independent. It's great to be independent and not rely on anyone. I'm not saying you should be like codependent on people around you. You should be independent, but that doesn't mean you should like kind of shut yourself off and not. I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to say like it's not something you should feel guilty for wanting someone to lean on or someone to be there for you emotionally or someone to have sex with. Whatever the case, it's like that's part of what drives you as a human. And maybe you're not like your most ideal self in this moment and you never will be. It's always going to be a process. Life is always going to be a process of learning about yourself and growing, and there's never going to be one point in life that you get to where you're like, okay, now I'm ready for love. Now I'm ready to just like happen upon a relationship, sort of thing. Like, it's okay to admit to yourself that you want love and that, I don't know, love is something that is okay for you to have. And it's something we all want, and it doesn't make you like weak for wanting it. It's not something you should judge about yourself. And like I was saying earlier, we all kind of have this weird mentality of like, there's something wrong about the way that I don't know, am calling partnerships or romance or love or whatever the case into my life. And it might seem so natural for other people because you don't get to see their internal process, You don't get to see that they're having these same exact fights within themselves as you are. And we all have different ways of showing up in a relationship. We all have different attachment styles. It's going to look different for everyone. So you just can't like, I don't know, be so black and white in that way. Easier said than done. But with all that being said, let's start talking about idealization. And maybe that theme will come back up, just like the guilt, throughout our chat. But why do we idealize people? Why? We all do it. And I think this is going to be an interesting conversation with myself because I love to idealize people. And I don't know, it's just always interesting to get different people's perspectives on it because there's a lot of people that really stay away from idealization and they're like, I'm just going to see this person exactly who they are as they are, and like I'm not going to romanticize, not going to, I don't know, put that fog around them, which is fair, and probably the healthy thing to do. Not that there is a healthy versus unhealthy. It's not that black and white, But I think as young adults, as 20 somethings, it's kind of important to explore your, again, quote unquote, unhealthy traits. Maybe the things that adult you will look back on, or we are adults, like 40, 50-year-old you will look back on and be like, why did I do that? That was so silly. Like, I was being so immature. I think maybe this is bad advice, but I think it's important to explore your immaturity as a young person, because otherwise, when are you going to explore it? It's just going to sit there dormant, and it's going to continue to unconsciously drive you in your decision making. And the only way to get to know the kind of immature part of you is to act on it. You can't just analyze it and let it sit there. You have to, be in conversation with it in a very real, active way. Which I've learned the hard way. I used to think that I could just analyze away my, again, quote unquote, unhealthy traits, and that like once I kind of picked them apart, then they'd be gone and I'd be able to move in a way that felt better for me. That's not the case. I'm quickly learning, especially within relationships. So I think sometimes it is important to just let yourself, consciously, of course, explore whatever it is that's kind of coming up for you. So back to my question of why do we idealize? I think firstly, we idealize traits in other people that we want to embody within ourselves. I really idealize like very outgoing and passionate people. People who are like very big personalities. And I really, really, really idealize people who have many layers to them and are quite secretive. I really idealize darkness. People who've been through like psychological pain and kind of have a dark past. That's probably my number one section of idealization within people. And it gets me into some trouble because, for the person, that's just their life. It's not this big thing that I kind of think of it as. It's also not my thing to like pick apart and kind of be attracted by, like it's okay for me to be attracted by it, but I mean kind of like, I don't know, make it into my own thing and make it for something that I get to have and I get to feel into. Like, that's not fair to the person. It's just their lives. And I think we all have certain qualities and traits within people that we idealize. And again, not that that's a bad thing, because I believe that the reason why we're drawn to certain people and we have these kind of maybe traits or qualities within a person that we idealize, like for me, secrets, darkness, psychological layers to a person, it's because there's something within like our kind of core wounds that's attracted to that. Like our core wounds kind of almost mirror theirs in a way, and they like are like magnets together, and that's what makes like that's kind of what chemistry is almost, because there's so many people that will look really great on paper, but there's not this like, magnetic feeling between you and them. And I kind of, I don't know, see it as that, as like we're both in this like healing game together. And yeah, so like I think that's one place where idealization can come from. But I just got off track there. I was saying these are often traits that we want to embody for ourselves, and this can show up in different ways. This can be in the sense of, like I was just talking about with the core wounds, of like there's something about this person or like these qualities within this person that like feel like they reflect something in you, that like whether it be a side of you that you really like or a side of you that you wish got more attention, sort of a thing. It's like this mirror kind of reflection, maybe in an opposite way too, if that makes sense. But also it can be as simple as like I was saying, I like people with like big like passionate, more outgoing personalities. And that's a part of me that I wish I could step into more. And I have that side of me within me, but it's hard for me to like really let myself go there and embody it and kind of be in that spot. So if someone comes into my life that really embodies that, I might be more attracted to that because that's something I want to embody within myself. I also think that idealization comes from, okay, you have to remember that your perception of someone that you are seeing romantically is mostly about you. So you are kind of placing your own wants and desires onto this person and making up this story of like, this person is the one who can fulfill my wants and desires. And that's kind of why you are attracted to them in a way. Because there's no, I don't know, not to get too like philosophical, like there's no way to really know who this person really is. You know, you only know them through your own perception. And we all have a different set of like wants and needs and desires. And then if someone comes along and seems to embody like certain traits, it's like those traits are going to kind of be magnified because they like spark something within us. So I think that's another way idealization comes into play. But with all of this being said, I want to like firstly just like really get this point across. Do not judge yourself for idealizing people. And don't think that this is something within you need to stop doing or fix necessarily. Something to be conscious of, like I was saying, but I don't think relationships can exist without a certain level of idealization, especially partnership. Obviously, more so towards the beginning, it's like you kind of need to put that person on a pedestal and think there's some sort of quality and trait about them that like is almost kind of magical and just like fulfilling. And I think this is where the concept of soulmates has kind of been created, because like you need to kind of place this fog on on another person to be able to say, this person is the person I want to commit to, and no one else out there can fulfill my needs and desires in the way that this person can. That's a big statement. That's a really, really big statement. And I think that that's where like a healthy level of idealization comes in, because if you want to commit to someone in that way, you kind of, I don't know, have to, like I was saying, place these things on top of them. And obviously that will kind of wear off over time. And you kind of start to take them off a pedestal and see them as more of a human, and you see more of their flaws, sort of a thing. But I think a level of idealization still exists within that. Like if you're down the line, you choose to like commit to a person for life, it's like you're still saying, this person can fully fulfill my needs in a way that no one else can. And obviously there's so much more that goes into it than just that, but I'm just trying to say like idealization is always a little bit present, I think, in partnership or in romantic relationships. I think romance, to an extent, like 50% of romance is idealization. It's just something that we do, and it's kind of up to you whether or not you want to be conscious of it and use it as a tool to like get to know yourself and get to know what kind of qualities are important to you within a partner and that you want to embody for yourself as well. Like there's a lot of, it's all about you. I guess that's what you should always remember at the end of the day, is like, it's not about this person, it's all about you. Before I interrupted myself, as I tend to do, I was saying you kind of have a choice if you want to like play with this consciously and be like, okay, like I am idealizing this person, I see this about myself, but like I'm just going to continue to move with this so I get to consciously explore my own psyche and what I'm kind of romantically driven by. So, to kind of shift gears a little bit, just a little bit, I want to talk about how fun idealizing people is. And not to go overboard and like get really caught up in this image that you have for someone and then, expect them to follow the script that you've kind of written for them. That's not so good. But a certain level of idealization, especially in your early 20s or wherever you are in life, it's fun, and let yourself play with it and enjoy it, again, consciously, like I said. There's no right or wrong, and I think like I just keep saying, like the more you just kind of let yourself go with it and let it come up consciously, the more you're going to get to know about yourself and the more you're going to get to see how idealizing people hurts you in the long run, and eventually you will get to a partnership where it's like they do embody what you need and what you want, and there isn't as much romanticizing present. But I don't know, like, I think especially flings and things like that, if you're just kind of seeing someone really casually, like, it's so fun to idealize. And this is one of the themes within this chat today that's very present in my life right now. I have a silly little fling situation with someone, and I like idealize him so much. I know that I do, but I'm conscious of it, and it's kind of like a running joke too, and it just allows me to be like really playful and silly within this. And I don't know, I just think that in your early 20s, again, however old you are, you don't have to be in your early 20s, whatever. If you have the space in your life to be a little bit playful and a little bit flirty and like idealize someone a little bit, like that's okay. As long as you're doing it consciously and you're not getting caught up in it and it's just like a casual thing. But where it starts to become a little bit tricky is when we are dating around looking for partnership. It's not a casual situation. And I kind of, again, want to change gears and move into what Maya was talking about when she was speaking on how she will idealize people who she knows cannot meet her emotional needs. And she tells herself, oh, they're the best at this, they're the best at that. She always finds the good in people, even though she knows like they are not enough for her. They're not going to be able to meet her where she needs to be met. So why do we idealize the wrong people and move towards emotional unfulfillment? Why do we do that? What is that cycle all about? Why can't we stop being with the wrong people? Why do we stay in situations that are unfulfilling romantically? So this is where my current experience comes in. And this is something I've really been struggling with over the past, a long time. But specifically over the past month or so, I've just been really guilty and hard on myself for still being in something that doesn't meet my emotional needs. And I know what I'm going to get out of this person, but I keep going back to them. Why do I do that? And I beat myself up for this a lot and feel really guilty over it because it's like I know that I deserve more. And here's another situation where I'm going to reference preachy people on Instagram. There are a lot of people out there who preach, if this person isn't meeting your needs, isn't giving you what you want emotionally, cut them off. You deserve more. You deserve more. People say that all the time. Like, don't you feel like you deserve more? You deserve more than what this person can give you. And that might be true. And you might be consciously aware of yeah, I deserve more. But for some reason, you keep going back to it. We all have situations like this in our lives, I guarantee. Don't beat yourself up for this because it's not that easy. It's not like you can just logically tell yourself, I deserve more, so now I am going to take the steps towards whatever more looks like. Because there's a lot of stuff within the psyche, patterns that your brain has been conditioned to move in, the language that you speak within romantic situations, that is so invisible and deeply ingrained that you sometimes physically can't stop doing what you're doing because it's just the language that you speak. So again, I really want to get across the point, don't be hard on yourselves if this is something you're going through. If you're in a situation with someone where it doesn't feel like enough, but like you keep going back to it. But at the same time, I don't want this to be like, I don't know, like take this with a grain of salt, because I don't want this to be like confirmation that you should stay with someone that doesn't feel good, sort of a thing. It's all about being conscious and doing the inner work. If you are idealizing the shit out of someone that you know is really bad for you, and you're not questioning yourself, you're not journaling about it, you're not talking about it in therapy, you're just doing it over and over, and it's this repetitive loop, I would say, okay, that's not good. That's probably something that you should have a conversation with yourself about. But if you're doing the work, if you're questioning yourself, if you're talking to yourself about it, if you're moving through the emotions very honestly, if you're talking about it in therapy, whatever, it's kind of best case scenario. Because we tend to repeat patterns within our romantic relationships until we kind of have this like level of completion within ourselves. And like understanding within ourselves. And like I was saying earlier, like you cannot understand these patterns and these processes that go on inside of you without actually acting on them and being in conversation with them in the physical world. Like you can't just analyze these forces that drive you to idealize certain people and stay in situations that aren't emotionally fulfilling. You can't just analyze them and like get to the core of them and be like, okay, that's it. Like, that's why I do this. It comes from childhood. It comes from this place. No, I'm not going to do it anymore. It doesn't work like that, speaking from personal experience. So yeah, it's important to get to know these parts of you. Like, what is the language that you speak when it comes to intimacy and romantic attraction to other people? And the only way you can get to know that language is by speaking it, is by acting on it. So you might be asking yourself, okay, but like, why am I, if I logically know that this isn't what I want in the end, like end game, this isn't meeting my needs, if I can logically identify that, then why do I keep acting in this cyclical way of going to people who aren't enough for me? You guessed it, it comes from childhood. We, as I kind of talked about a few episodes ago on the emotional chaos episode, we learn kind of our language of intimacy, and we create schemas for what our most intimate relationships will look like within our childhoods. Let me give you an example from my own life. Quite vague, of course, because I never want to be too specific, just for my own boundaries. But so growing up, as I've talked about a little bit, I did not have my emotional needs met. And time again, I was kind of left alone to deal with my own emotions, which felt very isolating. And I had a very close relationship with my family, a very good relationship with my family, quote unquote good. But when it came to like the big emotional stuff, I was left alone and kind of emotionally abandoned in that way. So I'm used to thinking of intimate relationships as this pattern of like, okay, things are generally good, but then when it comes to emotions, you're going to leave me alone to deal with it. And there's never going to be, like, we're never going to meet emotionally. And a situation that I've been involved in for a while now really plays out that pattern of the emotions are really big for me, but I'm fully left on my own to kind of deal with them. And there's this pattern of kind of like abandoning me in this very like hot and cold sort of a way. And this is a situation, like I said, that I've judged myself for being in a lot. But at the end of the day, it's like, this is my attachment style. I can't just somehow change my attachment style overnight. I have to work with what I've got, work with the language and the tools that I have, and trust that by consciously exploring these patterns, I'm somehow getting myself to a place where I can actually be in a relationship where my needs are met. I hope this is making sense. I think sometimes it's hard because I like to talk in very broad terms just so we can kind of all get something out of it, but hopefully this is landing somewhere within you and you can kind of see these themes within your relationships. But yeah, going back to idealization, like I think that's kind of why we do it. And a lot of the times it does lead us to emotional unfulfillment, but sometimes we're just used to that. We're used to being emotionally unfulfilled, you know? It's just like a pattern that exists within our lives that our brain kind of automatically carries out, and we're comfortable within that. And along with that, Maya mentions like saying that she's happy single, or she always tells her friends like, I'm fine being single, like I'm having a good time, whatever, but maybe she's not really. Which kind of will go full circle here. Goes back to the little submission that I read in the beginning. But I think this is kind of a pattern too of maybe like you're just so used to being single or being alone that it's kind of like all you know, and you almost expect it to a degree. So it's hard for your brain to consciously be like, oh, it's okay for me to be in a relationship. It's okay for me to seek fulfillment from another person, if that makes sense. So my voice is getting a little shaky. I think I've talked enough. I hope, like I said, these words landed somewhere within you. Please message me on Instagram or leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube, listening on YouTube, with your own thoughts and experiences on idealization. I think this is a really interesting conversation, and I'm excited to talk about it more. We'll definitely do some sort of chat on my stories whenever I post this episode. So follow me on Instagram, sammi.quinn, and please send over any submissions that you have for the podcast over there. I would love to hear from you and chat with you. And thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you all next time. Bye.